Well, what we know is that this was not a spontaneous act by Israel, but rather a well-planned action that has been over a year in the preparation, and that it has apparently been closely coordinated with the United States in every aspect of this strike. Um, we also know that this was a very sophisticated attack, not just in terms of the technology used to deliver kinetic damage to Iran, but that this attack has incorporated um, a decapitation element to specifically eliminate targeted personalities from the Iranian government, people who uh, would be at the center of strategic decision making. Um, this attack, I believe, is a precursor for a campaign whose objective goes beyond simply seeking to um, eliminate Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the potential threat derived from such. I believe this is a campaign whose ultimate objective is regime change in Iran, because from the Israeli perspective, Israel will only be secure once the existing theocracy in Iran has been removed from power. So this is an existential struggle, and I think it's important for people who are watching what's happening to understand that this is not a conflict that can end in negotiation. This is a conflict that only ends in death and destruction of one of the two nations currently involved. Either Israel is fundamentally defeated and eliminated as a regional threat, or Iran is fundamentally defeated and eliminated as a regional threat. At this juncture, I don't see any middle ground.
You just heard Scott Ritter, former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and UN weapons inspector, deliver a chilling assessment of Israel's recent attack on Iran. His words were direct and unambiguous. This was not a spontaneous act by Israel, but rather a well-planned action over a year in the making. And more disturbingly, I believe this is a campaign whose ultimate objective is regime change in Iran. That's not just speculation. It's an interpretation from someone who has spent his life inside the machinery of war, understanding how nations plan, prepare, and execute strategic operations. Let's break down what he said and what it could mean for the future of the Middle East. A calculated attack. According to Ritter, this wasn't just another round of tit-for-tat violence between Israel and Iran, two nations that have been locked in a shadow war for decades. This was a sophisticated, multi-layered military operation, combining precision strikes on infrastructure, targeted assassinations, and long-term planning coordinated closely with the United States. While official reports are still emerging, early accounts suggest that Israel launched airstrikes deep into Iranian territory, hitting military bases, radar installations, and possibly nuclear research facilities. What makes this attack particularly dangerous? It marks a significant escalation, a direct assault by one sovereign state against another, violating international law and dramatically raising the stakes. One of the most alarming aspects of Ritter's analysis is the mention of a decapitation strategy, targeting key figures in the Iranian government believed to be central to strategic decision-making. If true, this goes far beyond military retaliation or deterrence. This is targeted warfare aimed at destabilizing the leadership of a nation, a tactic historically associated with regime change operations. The logic is simple. Remove the heads of command, and the system collapses. But as history has shown, from Iraq to Libya, such assumptions rarely play out cleanly. Instead, they often lead to chaos, resistance, and unintended consequences. Still, Ritter argues that this approach fits a broader Israeli doctrine, eliminating the current Iranian regime entirely. Because as long as the Islamic Republic exists, so does the threat, at least in the eyes of some Israeli leaders. Ritter also emphasized that this operation did not happen in isolation. He claims it was closely coordinated with the United States, which raises serious questions about Washington's role. Was this a green-lighted mission? Did the U.S. provide intelligence, logistics, or even diplomatic cover? We may not know all the details yet, but the level of sophistication involved suggests that Israel couldn't have pulled this off alone without American assistance. This aligns with a pattern we've seen before. the U.S. enabling regional allies to take aggressive actions while maintaining plausible deniability. But the problem is, once you enable a proxy to launch a major strike on a foreign power, especially one like Iran, you become part of the conflict. And that means the risk of wider war increases significantly. So why would Israel go this far? To understand that, we need to look at how certain factions within Israel view Iran. For them, the Islamic Republic isn't just a rival, it's an existential threat. Iran supports groups like Hezbollah and Hamas, funds anti-Israeli militias, and has pursued a nuclear program that many Israelis see as a potential weapon of mass destruction aimed directly at their country. From that perspective, containment isn't enough. Deterrence isn't enough. Only the removal of the current Iranian regime offers a path to what some call lasting security. But as Ritter warns, this is a conflict that only ends in death and destruction of one of the two nations currently involved. That's a sobering statement, and one that should alarm anyone concerned about peace in the region. Because if both sides believe this is an existential fight with no room for negotiation, then diplomacy becomes irrelevant, and war becomes inevitable. The implications of this attack extend far beyond the borders of Israel and Iran. A successful strike might embolden other actors, including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, or even militant groups, to take bold steps in the region. A failed strike could provoke a retaliatory response from Iran and its allies, potentially drawing in U.S. forces stationed across the Middle East. And if Iran chooses to retaliate in kind, perhaps striking Israeli cities or targeting U.S. bases, we could see a rapid spiral toward full-scale war. Even more concerning is the potential reaction from Russia and China, both of whom maintain strong ties with Iran. If Moscow or Beijing perceive Western backing for this attack as an unacceptable provocation, they may respond in ways that further destabilize the global order. In short, this is not just a Middle Eastern issue, it's a global one. So where do we go from here? First, we must recognize that military solutions to political problems rarely work, and when they involve regime change, they almost always backfire. Second, we need to restore diplomatic channels, not just between the U.S. and Iran, but between all major powers involved. Third, we must question whether proxy wars and covert operations truly serve our long-term interests, or if they simply create more enemies than they eliminate. Finally, we must remember that nuclear deterrence only works when all sides believe the other will survive. Once that balance is threatened, once one side believes the other must be destroyed, the world moves dangerously close to catastrophe. In conclusion, Israel's attack on Iran represents more than just another flare-up in a long-standing conflict. It is a strategic shift, one that signals a possible move toward regime change, escalation, and a new phase of Middle Eastern warfare. Scott Ritter gives us a rare insider's view of what this could mean, and the warning signs are clear. War is never clean, and regime change is never simple. As tensions rise and narratives harden, we must remain vigilant and think critically about the path we're being led down. Stay tuned for more analysis right here on The Informed Perspective. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Well, what we know is that this was not a spontaneous act by Israel, but rather a well-planned action that has apparently been over a year in the making. It seems to have been closely coordinated with the United States in every aspect of the strike. We also know that this was a very sophisticated attack, not just in terms of the technology used to deliver kinetic damage to Iran, but also because it incorporated a decapitation element aimed specifically at eliminating key individuals within the Iranian government, people who would be central to strategic decision-making. I believe this attack is a precursor to a broader campaign whose objective goes beyond simply eliminating Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the potential threat that poses. I believe this is a campaign whose ultimate goal is regime change in Iran. From the Israeli perspective, Israel will only feel secure once the existing theocracy in Iran has been removed from power. So, this is an existential struggle. And I think it's important for people watching this situation to understand that this is not a conflict that can be resolved through negotiation. This is a conflict that only ends in the death and destruction of one of the two nations currently involved. Either Israel is fundamentally defeated and eliminated as a regional threat, or Iran is fundamentally defeated and eliminated as a regional threat. At this juncture, I don't see any middle ground.